Are you concerned that your unhealed trauma has affected your parenting and you want to figure out ways to start repairing it? If you're all about the healing journey and willing to do whatever it takes to be the best version of yourself and repair your parenting, then make sure you subscribe, because I help thousands of people each day heal their traumas and improve their parenting. So by the end of this video, you will understand how trauma has affected your parenting, but you'll also walk away with some tips and tricks to repair any adversities that you may see with your children because of your parenting. These tips and tricks and things that I'm going to teach you in this video are the exact methods that I used when I was a trauma counselor and now as a personal coach. I've seen these methods work firsthand, including with my own family. So here are the first 3 steps in learning to repair some parenting that has been affected by your trauma. Now, a little bit on unhealed trauma and how it affects parenting. When we have unhealed trauma that we haven't faced or processed, we'll see it manifest in many of our domains: work, home, and even social situations. But more importantly, in how we parent our children. So what is trauma parenting? It is parenting from a place of fear based upon your own fears of what happened to you and what you think you needed then. You then project those exact desires onto your own children unknowingly and subconsciously. So what does trauma parenting look like? Well, it can look like many different things. Maybe you grew up in a home where your needs weren't met. Maybe there wasn't food, or you didn't have the right amount of clothes that you needed to attend school, or maybe you didn't have clean clothes. So you may find yourself trauma parenting where your kid has like 42 pairs of sneakers and the house is overflowing with snacks and there's drinks and boxes of stuff from BJ's and Costco in your garage, and there's this never-ending cycle of needs being met. That's trauma parenting. Your kid doesn't need 42 pairs of sneakers, and they don't need every single snack in the world. They just need to make sure that they have some sneakers and that they have food. And that's really difficult to understand when you've had trauma. So what's another example? Well, what if you grew up in an emotionally unavailable home where you didn't have your needs met, where no one even saw you, you didn't have enough attention, and you always felt alone? So a form of trauma parenting can mean that you don't ever leave your children alone. You are up their ass 24/7, and you feel guilty if you're not spending every waking moment with them. That is trauma parenting. That is not teaching them self-autonomy. That is not allowing them the ability to explore with their imaginations and to have some time away from you. Time away from you does not equate to neglect. But when you've had neglect growing up, you feel like, oh my God, I am neglecting my child if I'm not with them all the time. You're not. Another example could be if you grew up in a very chaotic and violent household, or you saw terrible things happen to people you love, including yourself. You may find yourself as a parent screaming, constantly yelling, not because you want to berate your children and make them feel awful about themselves, but because you're trying to protect them. You're fearful, you're scared that something terrible is going to happen to them. And that comes out in trauma parenting. And then afterwards, you feel awful. Those are all examples of trauma parenting in everyday life that we all do. Trauma, especially unhealed, affects each and every one of us differently. So now you're probably wondering, well, okay, clearly I trauma parent and clearly my trauma is not healed. Well, what do I do? How do I make sure I haven't destroyed my children? No worries. You have not destroyed your children whatsoever. And I can show you with these 3 tips on how to repair any concerns you may have with your children and your relationship with them. Once you have come to the conclusion that you have trauma parented, step 1 is self-awareness. I trauma parent, and this is how I trauma parent. And let me trace it back to the why. So once you're aware, that is step number 1. And now you can be more vigilant about your parenting, and you can make sure that you are checking yourself before engaging in a conversation with your child. Now, does being self-aware mean that you won't mess up? No, absolutely not. It just means that you'll get better and better at preventing it, and also better at repairing the relationship with your child. So now that you see you've trauma parented and you now know where it comes from, aka whether you're yelling or over providing or smothering or whatever it is, now you need to start identifying it in your relationship with your child. And you can do that simply by thinking about your relationship. When do you see it present the most? What are your triggers? And start writing those things down. Once you've acknowledged it within yourself and you're now aware, that's step 1. Now let's talk about step 2. Step 2 is all about acknowledgement. with your children. So let's say you have just lost your shit for the last time. You screamed, you yelled, your children are crying, and you feel awful. Why? Because afterwards you realize there was really no reason for me to yell like that. I was just worried something bad was going to happen. Now you take your awareness and you acknowledge it with your child. And it can look something like this. I'm really, really sorry that I yelled at you. It was uncalled for. And you didn't do anything that would have justified me getting that upset with you. I take full responsibility for yelling at you and causing you this pain right now. I was just worried. I was scared that something was going to happen to you, but I recognized that yelling at you didn't help the situation. And I also took away an opportunity for you to learn and find your own strengths. I understand if you're upset with mom or dad or caretaker, and you have every right to be. And I fully accept responsibility for my actions. I'm going to work harder on not yelling. I'm not saying that I won't. I'm saying that I'm going to work hard at it. So please feel free to hold me accountable to that. And if you need some space because you don't feel like talking to me right now, I fully accept that. That's what acknowledgement looks like. That is how you start to repair it. So you're aware now. Now you've acknowledged it with your child. So you took a potentially traumatic experience for them and changed it to an adversity, right? Because we all need to learn to deal with what's tough, or we're not going to be able to deal with the real world when we grow up. So what you were able to do was validate them in that moment. You were able to show compassion. You also scaffolded, you demonstrated and emulated the behavior that you want to see from them. You showed them how to accept responsibility. You showed them how to be aware and look back at why they did what they did and how why they do what they do can affect another person. You scaffolded the exact behavior that you now want them to learn. And they just learned an amazing lesson from you. So whatever you think was going on, they're going to hate me. They're going to think that I was verbally abusive. I've destroyed my children. You didn't. What you did, just compartmentalize that in your child's head that, okay. And I guarantee next will come a hug. It's okay, mom or dad or caretaker. We all make mistakes and you move on from there. You don't get stuck. Now here's step 3. Step 3 is where you find a plan to implement what you said you were going to do, because without it, it's going to be ineffective. So you have to come up with this plan of, I seem to always get very anxious and lose my patience when my child does this. You preemptively have these cognitions that prepare you. So the next time I see so-and-so doing this behavior, I would like for this to be my response. And you preemptively think about that in your head. You're already planning what the outcome is going to look like, right? And when that happens, you'll be more likely to catch yourself, take a deep breath, and pull it back. But if you end up losing your patience, it's just another conversation. You need to come up with a plan as to how you're going to start working on that behavior. For some of us, they may look like delegating tasks to another person in the family, taking a step back, processing and journaling exactly what happened in that moment, where you felt that irritability or that fear bubble up in your body. When you can start identifying within yourself where it's going, you can then come up with a plan of action. Take 5. Walk away. Don't immediately respond or react. These are things that we ideally want to progress to, but that are going to take a little time. Success does not happen without failure. Failure is part of success, and you'll never taste that successful moment until you can be okay with failing, accepting your failures, and coming up with a plan of action. So remember, the 3 steps are acknowledging it within yourself and becoming self-aware, acknowledging it with your child and accepting responsibility, and then coming up with a plan of action. So if you're struggling with parenting right now because you have trauma, tell me in the comments section, what is the biggest struggle for you? Now that you have an understanding as to how trauma can affect parenting and how trauma parenting can actually be worked through, don't forget to subscribe, because my next video is going to talk a little bit more about how to identify those triggers within yourself.